And, you know, even Jim Redeker, who worked with us before, you know, the fact that we had a mayor that turned around and wanted to point out things that needed to be done. The team got behind it, and we were able to get both state and federal support to go and have something like this happen. And even though we're talking about transit and rail today, not highways, I do want to acknowledge that we have our federal partner joining us, Amy Jackson Grove, from the Highway Division Administrator for Connecticut. And Amy, again, thank you for all the support. You know, maybe you're not giving us money in this one, but you will be giving us money in the next few that we're doing. So, and before I get started, I wanted to sincerely thank and recognize Congresswoman DeLauro. Even though votes held her up in Washington and she can't physically be here today, there's no greater champion for the state of Connecticut and the work that we do here at DOT. So can we at least have a round of applause for her, even though she's not here? I do want to recognize Representative Mary Wieslander. This project really is to her credit. She called up the DOT, brought the team out to the site, and really had the vision to make this project a reality. So thank you. And thank you to our federal and state leaders for investing in the transportation assets that will move this state into the future. And I have to be honest, this was a pretty good week for Connecticut. Monday, the infrastructure bill was signed into law, which will invest billions in our state. We're ending the week here in Derby with a $12.6 million check from the US DOT for the proposed Derby-Shelton Multimodal Transportation Center. And thanks to federally funded raised grant we secured, the department will be able to make much needed improvements to the Derby-Shelton train station, from passenger amenities and infrastructure supporting battery and electric buses and the 2 new EV charging stations for the public. Investments that support increases in public transit, investments like this in Derby, help take care of Route 8 and Route 34 and put more people on our trains and buses. More frequent and reliable service on the Waterbury line, and better coordination here between Connecticut Transit, Greater Bridgeport Transit, and a game changer here for Derby, especially for the many transit-oriented development projects planned within a half mile of this station. This raised grant is about rebuilding infrastructure, sustainability, and equity, all of the elements of the proposed Derby-Shelton Multimodal Transportation Center that will help further transportation and transform this area. I want to thank Governor Lamont and our elected officials for their support and their commitment to getting this $24.5 million project off the ground. So at this point, I would like to ask Mayor Richard Zekin to come on up. Mayor, I know you're here.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, that's your man.
Where's the check? Well, that's what I must tell us.
He doesn't have it, we have it.
Senators, congresswomen, fellow mayors, select women, representatives, everybody that's here from the public, and I'm just so excited. My staff, backlit us for the last 4 years, we've been working very hard with our partners, Griffin Hospital, and everybody else in this city to really move Derby forward along with Shelton to get this going. I mean, we're a distressed city on this side. This is a shot in the arm for us. We've been working so hard. When we walked in here, we didn't know really what we were doing, but now we're over here. We got great teamwork over here with our representatives to help us get to where we're at right now. This is going to be such a great impact for the city of Derby and for the region, for the train services, and for everything else that we have going on here. So I just want to thank the delegation for all of you, everything that you did for this. The citizens of Derby really appreciate it, and the citizens of Shelton do also, and I just look forward to seeing these projects going and seeing Derby being built up. So thank you for all coming down here, and I look forward to the near future on all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for acknowledging that we have Representative Claritas here, we have Representative Rochelle here, Representative Wieslander here, Senator George Cabrera, and Mayor Loretti. So at this point, I'd like to call up Bill Purcells from the Greater Valley Chamber.
Here.
Okay.
Wow. Cut this meeting by a half hour.
I'm not making that comment. At this point, I would like to play a video from Rosa DeLauro, who couldn't be here, but wanted us to know that she fully supported it.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here today at the Derby-Shelton train station.
but votes in the House on the Build Back Better Act, a once-in-a-generation investment in child care, climate change, paid family and medical leave, and an expanded and improved child tax credit, which is a proven lifeline for the middle class, has kept me in Washington rather than being there with all of you. I so wish I could be there in person with Governor Lamont, my partners in the Senate, Senators Chris Murphy and Dick Blumenthal, and thank them all for their steadfast support for the new Derby-Shelton train station. As chair of the House Appropriations Committee, I will always work with my colleagues to meet the moment and build the architecture of the future. And that includes looking for ways to provide more funding for RAISE grants, formerly known as Tiger Build grants. So I was pleased that we were able
I helped write the remarks, if that helps.
That is all, unfortunately.
We got the gist.
I am so glad I didn't have to press that button to move the work. I've had those type of issues before. At this point, I mentioned already about what had happened earlier this week, but we've got our two senators here, and something has happened in the House as of a few hours ago. So, Senator Murphy, okay, you're on.
Right. Well, listen, thank you very much, Commissioner, Governor, to our very big state delegation here, and to our local leadership, to two mayors. Listen, this is an example of what happens when we work together, right? When Republicans and Democrats work together, when we get together at the state, and local, and federal level and decide that we're going to do something good for a community. This is a win-win-win, win-win, right? Everybody benefits by making this investment. You're going to have local folks be able to much more easily access a regional asset, be able to get on a train. You're going to have people who are moving from buses to trains to cars be able to make that transition so much more quickly. Taking 10 minutes or 15 minutes off a commute by having a really well-run intermodal system may sound like a small deal, but that's a big deal when you're trying to rush to get to your kid's soccer game, or when you want to stay a little bit longer at work to get another client in the door and make a little bit more money. And of course, it's a big win for regional economic development, right? We are all about transit-oriented development right now. And the proof is in the pudding. When we invest in train stations, when we invest in multimodal stations, developers follow. Economic development follows. And we have seen, thanks to Governor Lamont's leadership, a rush of people and businesses to this state over the course of the last several years. Some of it has to do with the pandemic, but we need to be able to take advantage of a lot of families and a lot of businesses that are interested in coming to the state, and in particular interested in coming to the Valley because of all it has to offer. This is the beginning of really big things for the Valley and for Connecticut. Remember, this grant is not from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. This is part of the federal DOT's annual grant making process, and we make sure every year when these grants come out, and the name changes all the time of this particular grant program, to make sure that Connecticut gets its fair share or more. But the bipartisan infrastructure bill is going to allow us to take grants like this and layer other money on top of it. So this train station becomes more valuable because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Because that bill will allow us to make improvements to the rail line, will allow us to invest more in transit agencies to provide more bus options. We'll make sure that the train station we're building with RAISE grant funds is going to be even busier because the quality of the infrastructure is going to be improved through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Again, I'm just proud of the team standing with me today, proud of the fact that we can come together around a community priority like the Derby-Shelton train station, and proud of the fact that the additional legislation being signed into law as we speak is going to make sure that this is a wise investment for generations to come. So, Commissioner, thank you very much for having us here today.
Senator, I will respond to you on a couple of your points, including the time savings, but for right now, I would like to bring up Senator Blumenthal to come out and make a few comments.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm going to give the rest to Rosa DeLauro to speak. Because I'm sure she said it much better than I could. First of all, thank you, Commissioner, for your steadfast dedication to rail.
Thank you.
In particular. This guy is a rail guy in the best sense of the term. He's lived it, he's ridden it, and he has made it happen even better here in Connecticut, and we really appreciate it. And I think it is a testament to the governor that he has not only chosen you, but backed you.
Yes.
Chris has made a lot of points really well, and I'll try not to repeat them. But I want to be somewhat blunt. You know, the Valley has a lot of grit and guts, and too often is neglected. Let's be honest. The Valley too often is neglected. We need to invest in the Valley, not only because of its great people, but it is an underutilized resource. People are moving here, and this improvement and investment in this rail station will have a transformative effect that is enduring and deep, because it is a down payment. It's money down on the Valley. It's money down on rail in the Valley. And the platforms that are more accessible, the crosswalks and sidewalks that it will create will make rail more comfortable, more attractive. This parking lot is going to be full. We need to think about where we're going to address the parking problems that will exist when rail becomes increasingly popular in this area. Rail is the next thing in transportation for the Valley. Now, again, I'm going to be blunt. The competition for these grants is fierce. Everybody wants this money. Everybody's competing with the Department of Transportation's scarce resource. We fought tooth and nail for this project because it means so much. The dollars, 12 million, are important, but even more so, the investment and the commitment. It's a commitment to rail and to energy efficient, environmentally friendly transportation. And on that score, we had a big victory this morning in the House of Representatives. This approval of the Build Back Better program, half of it goes to energy efficiency and electric vehicles. Half of that $2+ trillion goes to better use of resources in an environmentally friendly way. There's no better use of resources for environmentally friendly transportation than rail. And part of that package, and Senator Murphy and I fought for it, is $10 billion for high-speed rail. $10 billion. It may not sound like a lot in comparison to $2+ trillion, but it's a lot. $10 billion for high-speed rail. Again, a down payment on a different magnitude of commitment to rail, not only in the Valley, but throughout the state of Connecticut, the most densely populated region, part of it in the country, the only part of Amtrak that is profitable, the Northeast region, and a place that is made for rail because of densely populated, highly concentrated population that has to go places to deliver goods and services. We need more rail. So again, I want to thank everyone here. This project is just a sneak preview, just a beginning. And it's a pretty good beginning, but just a beginning to what we see for the Valley, for rail, and for the people who live here, the great people who make the Valley so productive. Thank you.
Before I bring the governor forward, I also want to acknowledge Metro North, the work that they have done here. The fact that, you heard Senator Murphy talk about higher speeds, faster times. While we were going through the pandemic, and Don Schubert, again, for all the people that have worked from the union and the contractor side, while this rail system was down, we took the time to go out there, put in all the ties that needed to be done, put in a new signal system. I actually worked on this line as a locomotive engineer, and to give you an example, the last signal you'd get going up to the end of the line in Waterbury was an approach, which meant you could only go 30 miles an hour for multiple miles going in, and it added a good 10 to 15 minutes to the time on every single train. That's not the way we go forward, and I'm saying this because there has not been a time that this governor has not turned and said, Joe, what are you doing to get the trains moving faster and more reliable? Governor, this is one of the examples of what the DOT team has done. And Governor, I'm calling you up now to go and say, it's a pleasure to work for you, and I love the challenge.
Hey, Joe, it's a pleasure to work with you, and I love the challenge. And the special hats off to Rosa DeLaura. I mean, that went on for hours last night, the Build Back Better. I'm so glad they got that passed. It's all about growth and opportunity, and if you don't want to vote for universal child care and universal pre-K and make that a possibility for everybody, just vote no. Does it take you 8.5 hours of filibustering? You're getting paid by the word. And now it goes on to the Senate. And when it comes to transportation, when it comes to the infrastructure bill, we were all down there, Chris, Dick, and I, for the signing, I guess earlier this week. It's about growth and opportunity again. This is a state that's had sort of a shrinking economic pie and everybody fighting over a smaller and smaller slice. That's not the way the world works, especially for us in the business. You like an expanding economic pie, and that should mean opportunity for everybody. And when Dick talks about a down payment, a good public policy in infrastructure, like a rail station, multimodal transportation center right here, has got to be about growth and opportunity. And that's what it's meant for the Valley. I mean, Mark, you and I have spent a lot of time recently, a lot of things going on in Shelton. Butterfly, wasn't crazy, Ranpack. These are good paying jobs. And I think a lot of that's due to the fact that we have a great workforce, an expanding workforce, and we have a good transportation system. We were just in Ansonia, we're increasing the trains, two-way rail service, a lot more frequent and a lot faster. And, Richard, again, I love reading about the 800 units being built. This is part of economic opportunity. You want to get good jobs here? Believe me, every day we're talking to folks interested in the Valley. They ask about housing. They ask about will they have the workforce they need. They ask about how easy it is to get people in and out. And it's a lot easier thanks to investments like this. I think you probably heard Mayor Hess and Mayor O'Leary talking on the other side of the rail. That will be over 1,000 jobs and a big piece of economic development, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I think there's extraordinary potential right here, and I think a lot of the business community is beginning to see that. It only works if it works for everybody, and everybody gets an uplift from this. And that's what we mean by investment. That's what you mean by a down payment. Make sure these are things that pay dividends down the road, and I think that's what this transportation system is all about today. Thanks.
At this point, if you have any questions for our delegation or our governor.
Well, I've got a question for you.
I didn't offer that.
Well, you were here last week when we were in Ansonia and or up in Hartford, and I believe it was Mark Rolfe was explaining that as a result of the passage of this act, or anticipation of the passage of this act, that DOT officials have been, reviewing short and long-term capital plans with an eye towards, okay, what can we move up in the 5-year capital plan? What might we expedite, and what might we be able to move up on the longer-term plans? I'm just wondering, where do things stand in terms of that review, and is there like sort of a timetable for presenting a renewed plan to the governor?
Again, I'm going to turn around and thank you for the opportunity to go and say this, but go to CT.gov, okay, take a look at a time for Connecticut and what we've put in there, because where we were talking about what our plans were going forward, there's a reality to all those plans as this funding is coming in. So yeah, we are adjusting. The governor and I just recently met on the fact that just in terms of, that we have a lot of people that are taking retirement from the DOT, taking retirement from the state. So we have very, very active program going on to try and get those positions filled. And with the passage of the bill that you heard the two senators talk about, I need at least 200 more positions there to deal with the requirements on how you have to go after this funding going forward. And I want to point out that you've had a DOT that every single year, long before I came here, no matter what money was put on the table by the federal government, we used up our share, and when other states turned money back in, we went after those funds. So we're very aggressive on that. We're working on it. Stay tuned. You'll see the timetable, because we're also watching what happens with this bill that it now moves to the Senate, how much money we're going to have. But at a bare minimum right now, we're looking at $1 billion a year, okay, to the state of Connecticut between highways and rail. You've already seen that we've gotten grants for doing electric buses up in Waterbury. All this is thanks to the work that has gone on from both our state representatives and senators and our federal partners that are on it, and a governor who has always made transportation the center focus here. So I hope that answers your question, because again, I didn't offer to go and give an answer on that.
The bottom line,
Yeah.
how soon are we going to see faster service on this rail line and other rail lines in Connecticut?
And the answer, did the governor put you up to this? Because he turned around very recently and he said, you said that we'd be seeing something next year. You're going to start seeing changes in this coming year, okay? And I'm going to leave you with that, because a lot of this, again, we're in the middle of negotiating our schedules with Metro North, all right? They are going through it right now. They're scrubbing it. And I don't want to make announcements that I can't deliver on until we've actually sat down and figured that out.
So you can't say right now.
I can't say right now. Is that an acceptable answer? Any other questions for the delegation?
Well, can we talk a little bit now, Wood, about the next steps, senators, with the Build Back Better Act? I mean, it looks like, okay, the House passed it, going to go to the Senate. Who knows what's going to happen there, but there's a good chance it's not going to be what came out of the House, so it's going to have to go back to the House. So can you sort of, I mean, this is obviously a big moment, but what's next?
It's a tremendous moment, an enormous accomplishment for the House. 220 to 213 is not a huge margin, but it's solid considering the razor-thin margin that Democrats have in the House, and considering also that most people were talking pretty negatively about the chances of passing it. This has been, this second part of the infrastructure program has been uphill all the way, and I never say I'm optimistic, but I am more hopeful than ever. There's a clear path to get it done. There is a clear path to cut costs, lower taxes, create more jobs, and strengthen the economy, and particularly on prescription drugs, on child care, universal pre-K, climate change, creating jobs, housing. This transformative bill will have enormous and enduring effect if we can pass it. And I think we all sense that there's a historic opportunity here. Obviously, there's going to have to be give and take. There's going to have to be compromise. And it may well have to go back to the House in some form. But I think we have the will to do it. Clearly, there's a consensus that it needs to be done. The American people deserve it. And if you look around the Valley and Connecticut, every day you see parents wanting daycare for their kids, universal pre-K for them, everybody talking about climate change and the threat it represents, needing jobs, even as much skill training for those jobs. The human needs are gargantuan. The opportunity is huge. And this Build Back Better program not only lowers costs of pharmaceutical drugs, it improves health care, which is #1 on what people want. So I think there's the will to do it, and I'm very, very hopeful that we will do it.
Just quickly add, so big deal. The House passed it with a cushion. I think we're 95% of the way there. Many of the toughest issues have already been hammered out. I was deeply involved in the negotiations around the prescription drug title that will cap insulin at $35 a month, that will lower out-of-pocket costs for seniors to $2,000 a year. That was one of the most controversial parts of the bill, and I don't think it has to be renegotiated when it comes to the Senate. So I think there's 5% of the bill that we'll have to take a look at when it gets to the Senate, but my hope is that we can turn it around, get it back to the House by the end of the year. The practical implications of this bill, for the Valley are really important. If you're making $50,000 a year in the Valley, you could go bankrupt just by childcare costs alone if you got two parents working. This bill for average families in this part of the state is going to lower the cost of childcare by up to $10,000 a year. Right? That's just a game changer for families here. So we got to get this passed. I think it's very close to being done. I think the momentum now is so significant that there's no option to fail in the Senate.
And the
You
governor.
say definitely by the end of the year?
Our goal is to get this passed into the president's desk by the end of the year. It wouldn't be the first time that a arbitrary deadline on this bill didn't come true. But deadlines, whether they are artificial or real, have the effect of sort of forcing action. So I think all of us would like to get this done by the end of the year, but I've been in the Congress long enough to know that sometimes you have to wait for good things.
Just one quick add. It's not really an arbitrary deadline. It's based on all the work that we have to do. We have the debt ceiling, the budget, voting rights. We have a full plate. We need to get this measure done, if not by the end of the year, within weeks afterward. We can't push it months down the road. And there's a real sense of urgency. There's a sense that there's no time to waste here because we do have momentum. Time is not on our side. We need to push as quickly as possible. So I really do think that it's a realistic deadline based on what we need to do.
I'd like to follow up with you on the commissioner's discussion. These 200 people are going to be needed at DOT to get access to this money. What sort of where do you stand on that? Where is that something that you're taking into account as you're preparing your adjustments to the second year of the biennial budget?
Yeah, you bet we are, Paul. I mean, you just heard from Chris and Dick. We wouldn't have this grant. It was a competitive grant. You got to get to the front of the line. You have to have design, build, engineering ready to go. You got to be able to show the feds this is going to be transformative and make a difference. And that requires a lot of people power over at DOT. They've been doing it now. Now with an additional $1 billion a year, I got to make sure we're at the front of the line, ready to take advantage of that money, and ready to take advantage of other competitive grants. But it's tough. We're competing with consultants and the engineering firms. Everybody's trying to source the same talent. We got Kelly Valeris out there really making an emphasis upon training for design and engineers. So over the next year or so, we'll have more skilled people to choose from. Don't miss this opportunity.
Well, part of the money is, according to the description from your office, is to accelerate projects. Can you use any of this money to hire personnel, additional
Yes.
personnel? Okay.
Or at least they'll pay a good portion of their salaries. We're allocating that right now.
Okay. And do you see this as any kind of a detriment? Are you concerned about this hiring needs, staffing needs, slowing the state's ability to apply and compete for this money?
Anytime you're hiring people to make investments that help grow the economy, I consider it an enormous plus. We haven't always been in this position. We've got the wind to our back. These are significant investments that make a big difference here in the Valley and beyond, and I think these are people that will help make it happen. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.